our recent sins. We love on you, Father, today. And we just thank you, Father. Of course, the number one prayer we send out is for you to go chase down the lost, Father, the broken and shattered. Yes. Love on them, Father. Show them how much you love them, Father, and snatch them up. Get them into your kingdom, Father. And I ask that you use us to speak your loving words to any shattered soul today that crosses our path. We thank you, Father, in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Here is my heart, have it all. My hands are open, I let go. I leave behind the things that pull me down, and look to you, the Holy One. In you stand unshakable, my future now unbreakable. So come what may, I choose to stay in your love that won't fade away. Jesus, come and have your way. Here's my heart, have it all. My hands are open, I let go. I leave behind the things that hold me down, and look to you, the Holy One. It's Jesus. In you I stand unshakable, my future now unbreakable. So come what may, I choose to stay in your love that won't fade away. Jesus, come and have your way. Jesus, come and have your way. Yes, I surrender to you. You are holy. You are holy. You are In you I stand unshakable, my future now unbreakable. So come may, I choose to stay in your love that won't fade away. Jesus, come and have your way. Have your way in this place, Jesus. Have your way, Lord God. So come what may, I choose to stay in your love that won't fade away. So come what may, I choose to stay in your love that won't fade away. You know what? Let's sing this together. So come what may, I choose to stay in your love that won't fade away. So come what may, I choose to stay In your love that won't fade, even in dark. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. In your love that won't fade away. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. In your love that won't fade away. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. Lord, in your love that won't fade away. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. In your love that won't fade away. Sing one more time. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. In your love that won't fade away. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. In your love that won't fade to stay. With you I'll stand secure. No future now I wait before. So come on, babe, I choose to stay. In your love that won't fade away. Jesus, come and have your way. 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 Lord God, we give you praise. Jesus.
Thank you, Lord Jesus. Good morning, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. All right, let's get our books. We need some help. Get that book. Lee Harmon, Ryan Scott, Jason Riffle, Ray Bundy.
Not that I don't trust y'all, but
Trying to get it out of that yard line and show you what's really going on.
I tell y'all what, Buddy Boy Vocalist right there had on the international face of "I know you're foreign, but I love you," right? Right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's that smile and wave face. Is exactly what that is.
Smile and wave, boy.
That is one of the most underrated cartoons of my time.
Tom and Jerry?
Penguins of Madagascar.
Okay.
Okay.
I like that.
Say it one more time.
Karate.
So Rico,
Kowalski, status report.
and then Rico just pops up with a machine gun.
No, we're not doing that this time, man. No.
Right.
Yeah. Me and Dad probably say that. Anytime that he's trying to figure out where I'm at, he has to be Kowalski status report. Hold on, man. I'm coming. Alright. Guys. What is up?
What page are we on? It feels like it's been months.
I know. We are, we're on point 5 of the Faith Produces, if that helps. Faith Produces Practical Works.
Faith won't work in your head.
Produces Practical Works.
Faith in your head.
Big fat James verse right up under it in blue. Maybe page 6, maybe.
Cease through the storm.
5. Practical works.
The red number.
Rest in
Red
motivation.
numeral 5.
Produces true hope. Produces practical works.
Yeah.
The transporter of faith. Faith is easier to come from passion. Right. Say it again.
Faith produces practical works. In red.
Yeah, it's in red and it has a 5 side.
I don't. I must be in like the old.
Perhaps.
That has to be it. That was what it was. Faith produces. Got it.
Narrow is the
Practical
road.
works. Page 5 of the new notes.
Jason been reading too much Revelation here, and in that day they will look for me and will not find me.
Will not find me.
Where I go, you cannot go.
Why not, God? I'm telling you, one of my favorite conversations is where he's like, he's talking to the disciples and he's like, you all know where I'm going, and saying, and Thomas is like, no, we don't. Like, stop talking to me like I know what's going on, and speak to me in like lowercase instead of cursive right now, because I have no idea what's going on.
You probably had that same look I used to have, like when I first started. Tyrone would be like telling me what to do and how to do something. He'd be like, whoop, ba-boop, ba-boop, ah. And I'm just looking at, no, Tyrone, I don't know what's up.
I don't know what
brain
movie
is
about
like
this.
Nah, I mean, like, nah.
And he'd just walk away smiling like, yeah, he got it. Tyrone, bro.
He knows.
He knows the face. He knows the face.
And the Lord knew.
Yeah. We were talking about, I said that the guy singing on that video, man, that's the international look of, I know you're foreign, but I love you. Because they had the subtitles in German. So he'd get done singing the line and be like, yeah, that's that. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Jesus. And just kind of like let it do its own thing. Yeah, fun stuff. All right. Well, cool. How are y'all?
Pretty good.
Good. Glad to hear. I'm well, thank you. Be careful. I was just talking to. I don't know if you may have left already, Joe. I was talking to Chris Cloud yesterday about me and Patrick Finn, one of the guys at church. A couple of years ago, we got into this gig of like actually telling people how we were doing when they asked us, like being flat out honest and full about it. Hey man, what's going on? Well, and I'm talking just giving lists of literally everything that I'm, maybe for that day or if it's early in the week, kind of what I've gone through the week. And on various occasions, I had people out at random, greeters and other people that you like, are in close quarters with when you're shopping or whatever, and they'll say stuff like that just to kind of make it less awkward that y'all are standing within 3 feet of each other reaching for brown rice on the shelf, and they don't really mean it, but like, oh, you got to know because you asked, right? I was in that whole asking you shall receive because you asked me how I was doing, and I, you know what I'm saying, I'll let you know. I'm talking multiple counts. They look at me and be like, I'm talking just walk right off in the middle of me talking and be like, all right, have a good day. And then other people would stand and listen and share back. And it was the easiest time I ever had of finding out what people were dealing with. And I was like, man, life kind of sucks sometimes. They were like, yeah. And they were like, but Jesus is good. And they were like, yeah. And everything would just like upside down, you know what I'm saying, like that fast. So Chris asked me yesterday how I was doing, and I just had like this itch to tell him everything that I had done this weekend. I was like, no, it's okay. He already loves Jesus. Y'all remind me, I'm not planning on forgetting, but his dad is going to be having surgery this morning. I think he already should be there for pre-op stuff, so we're going to lift him up in prayer this morning when we close out. All right, super cool. So, recap, because it does feel like it's been months. We started talking about what we coined as basically the fruit of faith a couple of weeks ago, and so far we've covered the points of, faith produces joy, faith produces true love, faith produces a rest in motivation, faith produces true hope. So these are the ones that we've gotten into so far. We've got, I think, 5 more left. And small pieces. Faith produces joy is easy. We talked about circumstantial happiness versus eternal contentment. And regardless of what I'm going through, and even if it's really bad, and lasts the rest of my life, I should be joyful. Why? Because at least at the end of my life, hell on earth is a totally different thing than hell's separation from the Lord for the rest of my life. So if I got to go through a crummy patch, I'm okay with that. I can hold on to that. That kind of ties in with number 4. Later on, you get down into faith produces true love. We talked about that, not necessarily just for the Lord, but also for other people. Right? When you are able to see with faith, it's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. I can look at people and be like, man, you know what? Even though you're not anywhere close to where God wants you to be, I love you. Because I can see where he wants you, and I know what he wants for you. And it's very, very easy to see people with compassion when you're operating from a place of great faith in the Lord. Number 3, rest and motivation. Good stuff. We talked about sonship, being rooted in sonship. We talked that Casey Doss quote, a sinner doesn't sin, a sinner isn't a sinner because he sins because he's a sinner. Basically, everything that you do does not produce who you are produces what you do. And when you can rest in the Lord and say, yes, I know that I'm seated in Christ and he's already done the work, and my feet are on earth as a footstool just like his feet are on earth as a footstool, and I can rest and relax because he said it is finished and everything I do flows and operates from him, and even when I'm not doing, he still loves me, I'm rested in motivation because of the faith that I have in the Lord. Next, we talked about faith producing true hope, which was another good one, because same manner, life could suck for the rest of our life. Kind of didn't make any sense. Life, it could just be rough for the entire time until we go be with Jesus, but we have the hope of going to be with Jesus. And even today might be really bad, but my hope is
Joy comes in the morning.
that's exactly right. Mercies are new every day. There's nothing that I really have to be stressed over in the long run. And when you start to see with eternal eyes, crummy days are crummy days. I'm not going to sit there and say that you should think that they're not, because that's not necessarily faith. Michael taught me that one time, man. We were sitting in his living room, and he told me one time, because I was talking, him and another friend of mine who's a type 1 diabetic, and we were talking about some story we read where this dude was like, I'm stepping out on faith and quit taking his insulin and died in like 3 days. Jeez. And Bo was like, yeah, I've thought about, is that what faith equals? Like, should I just quit taking insulin? And I was like, absolutely not. If there's a part of you that wants to see yourself healed from diabetes, and you've already, you've sought prayer, for yourself from other people, and you feel like, hey man, like let's give this a try and see what happens, do it. You go right ahead, but don't do it to the point to where when you're like on your literal deathbed and somebody's like, hey, it might be a good idea to go ahead and take this insulin, and then you're like, no, I got faith in God, I'm not going to take this, and then it's over with. Like Michael said it really easy, and I've held on to this for about 5 years. He said, faith at times seems irrational, but irrationality is not faith. And that's kind of like an easy way to put it. Doing crazy stuff just because it's crazy doesn't necessarily make it faith. All right? It might seem irrational. Hey man, I'm giving the last bit of my money for tithes even though I can't even pay my bills. That's pretty irrational. But you know what I got? Faith in the Lord to take care of me, because that's what his word says. That seems irrational. That's faith. But yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Do you think that if somebody were to not take their insulin and killed themselves, I mean, is that suicide?
I don't think if they're operating in.
Yeah, I think if they're operating from a place of I'm believing God to take care of me, I wouldn't necessarily qualify that as suicide. I'd qualify it as silly, for lack of better words, right? It's not wisdom. I promise you that.
We know someone who passed away, and they had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
They found out early they had cancer, and the doctor was like, we can take this right out. And they were like, nope, Jesus is going to heal me. And I didn't understand it. Think about that. Like, no.
There are denominations of Christians that are like incredibly anti-medicine because of that exact fact. They won't mess with doctors. They won't mess with prescriptions. They won't mess with any of that stuff because of, it's a radical notion of like Jesus is the great physician. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not necessarily saying that's wrong, of course, by any means, because I think everybody in here probably has some testimony to some degree of them being able to see the healing hand of God move either in their life or somebody they know immediately. So I don't want to go off and say that he doesn't do that at all. But at the same time, I don't think it's wrong to seek professional help.
You don't think that he put some of these sicknesses and stuff on the earth to kind of control the population, you know, in a way.
I think
mean,
sickness and things like that, I think we give too much ride for that. We had that question pop up in class on Wednesday. Somebody asked if somebody brought a friend who, you know, very low level understanding of scripture, so there was a lot of things they were taking, but they didn't know the full context to. So the point was fantastic, but they asked if God diseased China with the coronavirus as a punishment. And I was like, no, I don't. I think we give too much rise to God's excitement to punish us. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you did bad stuff. It's easy to blame people that we don't like going through something hard on that's God coming back to get them.
But if God was sitting there and He's seen that if the human race was about to destroy itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And He has to do something about it. Well, you know, put a virus down here and kill half the people. I mean, yeah, it sounds like something.
Oh, I mean, it sounds like one of those.
I mean, you wouldn't understand it.
Like I was watching what's that movie? Ender's Game this weekend. Same thing. Like I watched the Hunger Games series 2 weekends ago. That's kind of like that whole. Like I get the gist of like trying to make sure that everything continues to flow. I don't think God's worried about the earth overpopulating. See, and this is the difference is like especially because what we can actually kind of fit this into practical works a little bit, but when you get into things like okay, we're ruining the environment, or we're ruining the ocean, or Flint still doesn't have clean water, or these people are still over here starving and it's 2020 and there's no need for that because we know how to irrigate and grow crops like it ain't nobody's business, right? We're kind of perfected those things down to a science. And then to sit and to say, well, the reason that we're not, or the reason that it hasn't reached there yet, or whatever, is because God is willing to sacrifice the few to save the many. That's only happened ever one time, and that was Jesus. There's really no desire or need in God's heart to control the population, so to speak, for the sake of our benefit, right? What He's given to us is stewardship over the earth, period. So what happens to it and us in it, we cannot pin the entire blame on Him if He's given it to us to handle. There's a lot more responsibility that falls on our backs as people as a whole, specifically as Christians, because I think there should be just as much infiltration. We were talking about this yesterday, me and a couple friends of mine. Infiltration in places like the sciences and the humanities and literature and all like pop culture stuff as we try to put it into the business world and art and music and Hollywood and all the things like that we're like, man, I wish Christianity would invade this culture or that culture. And I'm like, well, you know, the thing is, we've kind of created this false notion that when you get saved, if you don't go straight into ministry, you're not as cool as everybody else, which is a whack idea. I need just as many people to start writing Christian psychology books to tell people that there's answers for all the questions that you're having about yourself that aren't just floating around out there in space somewhere or something you can't do anything about, as I do somebody to go into the marketplace and start infiltrating through that. You know what I'm saying? You need all those places in different areas. And we can sit and, of course, pray to the Lord and petition God for His involvement 100%. But if we just sit back and fold our arms and tap our foot and twiddle our thumbs and wait on Him to come down and do something about the ozone layer or the atmosphere or fresh water or, you know, sprouting food up out of the ground without getting up, going to pick some trash up out of the ocean, taking your butt to get a passport and going overseas and ministering and building houses and planting food for all these poor people or whatever it is that you want to do practically, then we're kind of missing the part of image bearing. Because Jesus could have just as easily said, like we do sometimes, I'm a son of God, and sat back and not done anything. And the disciples would have been like, oh, well, this is the model. And they just sat back and not done anything. And all those people that are still sick and whatever, they'd have brought them to Jesus and that'd have been just fine. But we would have lost out on the character and nature piece of God that is proactive towards mankind. Yeah. Right? And that is literally what we're here for.
Yeah, I mean, the word's clear about what causes disease. I mean, sin.
And then
sin is what causes death.
Yeah. All those things have been invited, right? Like, those, you know, no sickness until what? Adam and Eve. You know what I'm saying? And then all that stuff kind of comes through and starts to circulate. Now, you can kind of get off into that topic, but it has everything to do with the sovereignty of God. That's why when Adam and Eve played the blame game, like we talked about, and passed all that stuff down to the devil in the garden, it was sovereignty that said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to snatch this just because I don't like it. I can fix it. And what does he do? He sends himself in the flesh to fix it. So the way that we're supposed to do is the exact same thing. He could have been like, yeah, you know what, I don't really like that, smote the whole world, took it back and started all the way over. But he's got everything handled. And it took a hot second, right? Because you see like that sin is reaped and sown for thousands of years before Jesus shows up. But once he does, it eliminates sin seed. So now you can get to the point of, well, you know what, this world, I mean, does this world ultimately belong to the Lord? Yes, but who's it under the control of right now? We've been talking about jurisdiction for the last, 6 weeks? So you get into all these different places and atmospherically and spiritually and all, whatever kind of hoopla. But all those sorts of things, they're birthed from fallen world. And there's really not a super ton that we can do about it other than what we've been doing is pray against it, protect what's under your sphere of influence from it, and allow the Lord to start working in it however he can from what you're able to do. Go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say that you're trying to step into a kingdom mindset every day more and more. I understand that the life I'm living here in the world is very, very temporary. Here today, gone like a vapor tomorrow. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to go to Adam. When God told Adam, look, man, what you did, I'm going to place thorns and thistles in your path of life forever. I don't think it says, hey, I'm going to remove this. So, and then Jesus says himself in John 15:30, 16, in this life you will have trouble. King Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, just as fish are caught up in a net, mankind will be caught up in evil snares. So, and I do know this, I do know this, just like I heard the pastor say, look, talking about his mother that passed away, God finally had to come to him and speak to him and say, hey, don't worry, man, I'm going to heal her here, or I'm going to heal her there. AIDS patients that pass away, coronavirus, whatever it is, physically and emotionally, spiritually, depression, anxiety, God says, I'm going to heal you here, or I'm going to heal you there. And if I know that I got a seat in heaven for eternity, you could saw off my right leg right now. Guess what? God's going to give me a new one. He either here or there. Point blank. And that, for me, that deletes a lot of anxiety, worry, and all this other stuff. And so I don't sit back and question. Huh?
I don't let anybody stop your leg.
Okay.
So you know that.
On my toe?
No.
On my toes.
No. You don't got to worry about that.
Probably start hollering a different tune once we got that saw out. Hold on.
I was just kidding.
I need that one.
I wanted you.
So, I mean, with that being said, that helps me to high step all the stuff and it helps keep my eyes on Jesus and walk on water. And then I want to say one more thing. A lot of times here, man, I can't pound this in enough. We think we have a bad day. Brothers, we don't know what a bad day is.
No.
We have no idea.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Not at all. You remember going to that jail when you had all them warrants and walking in that first time? That's a bad day.
Yeah.
That's a bad day. Not knowing when you're going to come out the next 3 years.
The day me and you went into that right there off 2nd Avenue in the homeless shack. Well, they even got it better than a lot of the world. They still got the option to go do something. There's folks right now that don't even have the option. Don't even have the option. They might have to go kill a wild boar, barehanded, just to eat. No microwave. They can't even microwave
Under the
meat.
threat of being killed by a lion himself. You know what I mean?
So, I just urge y'all, man, to open your eyes and see what you have.
Yeah.
The takeaway, though, from the coronavirus question is that I don't believe that's the nature of God.
I don't either. But in a way, it's like, when do you stop it? Do you just let humanity kill itself off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's what you boil to. Now this is the thing, Ryan. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to skip you, but this is this is just fun.
That's what you pray for too. I mean,
Is it even our responsibility to stop it?
I think it is.
To a degree, yeah. So and that I guess that's kind of what we're trying to get at. So now Solomon's fun, right? Solomon says nothing new under the sun. What's been happening is going to keep happening. There's like everything that's gone on is going to keep going on. And literally there's nothing you can do that's never happened before. Everything's already occurred.
Yes, sir.
It just repeats. It's kind of depressing, but also kind of, it's comforting at the same time. Like, at least I know
Yeah.
that I'm not the reason this came up. This has been going on before, and I'm not totally at fault.
Once
So,
the big asteroid hits,
right, and I'm like, okay, good. So that was not my fault. Praise God. But I mean, like, you see that. And it's the same question that I'm sure has been asked 100 times for 100 good reasons. When, and you can even step backwards, right? Hitler's responsible for the death of 13 million people. Stalin's responsible for the death of 17 million more. Mao's responsible for the death of 36 million more, right? And we're regressing in history. You go all the way back, and you've got the bubonic plague, hundreds of millions of people, right? Further back, now we're talking biblical times, wars, rumors of wars, tribe wars, clan wars, you know what I'm saying? Over what? A rock and 5 feet of sand. And they're killing each other by the dozens. You know what I mean?
Samson killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean, Samson's walking around with the jawbone of a donkey, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Ties foxtails together, sets them on fire, lets them loose in the cornfield. All their crops, 100 more people. Crushes approximately 2,000 people when he's in there on display
Women
in
and children.
Dagon's temple. Yeah, don't care.
Don't care nothing
Indifferent,
about
right? After he lost his eyes.
Died in
You know what I'm saying? So like there's expression in man. We don't care. We don't, right? That it is the perversion of the earth is mine, which is not a false statement. You're just operating according to it in the wrong condition, right? So I can sit literally, and that's what Paul says, right? I can do whatever I want, whenever, however, and with whoever I want. Can I? Absolutely. Should I? Well, you know what I'm saying? All things permissible, not all things beneficial. So and we've talked about this, and same way. David goes off in what? Saul's killed his thousands. David is 10,000s, right? We cheer and hoop and holler. We're like, David's out here killing people that hate God. Well, later on, even though that's the case, God tells him, you can't build my temple. Your hands are too bloody. So, good thing for a minute, not good thing eternally. You see what I'm saying? We forfeit things now, and this is the point that I'm getting at. Whether we're doing things in the name of the Lord or not, there are things that we participate in that cause us to forfeit greater things later. Right?
Yes.
So I was talking with Sam Coulter and a buddy of his the other day that he works with, and they were talking about, I'm saved, but I like listening to trap music. I was like, that's fine. Right? Me and Joe talked about that yesterday. I had to give up trap music, and now anytime I want to motivate myself, I just listen to testimonies, and that is my whatever you want to call it, substitute. And I was like, well, that's fine. You can sit all day if you want to on the front porch and bump Young Dolph with the stogie. You know what I'm saying?
Young Dolph.
Yeah, Young Dolph. Hey, and look,
Young Dolph.
bad
Dolph
dude,
goes in.
telling you, he's serious.
Yeah.
But listen, you do that for too long, you become accustomed to that, and that's what's circulating in your heart, mind, and spirit. You're going to give up the opportunity to hear from the Lord and lay hands on somebody and see him recover in public. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Why? Because is it bad? No. I mean, is it permissible? Absolutely. Right? It's not what goes into a man, but what comes out of him that defiles him. But listen, what goes into you will dictate what comes out of you. Right? So if your command has been to purify yourself, consecrate yourself so you can hear the voice of the Lord, great thing. If you're trying to do that while simultaneously balancing Young Dolph and Lil Baby,
No.
Yeah. So for me, it just...
it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Any kind of trap music now takes me all the way back. You know what I'm saying? Of like old thoughts to... I remember being here and listening to... You know what I'm saying? I can't let it go. I don't...
Yeah, and that's how it is for some people. It's music's good like that. There are places that you can get to geographically that you're like, man, this looks or feels or sounds like this, and memory flood.
Right.
Music's the same way. Memory and attitude flood. All sorts of things come from those sorts. So basically, but getting it, 100%. There are things that you may not have healed from yet. All sorts of instances and for instances and whatever else. So bottom line, you can get to the point to where like, yes, we're responsible, especially with the knowledge that we have, to do our best in the sphere that we've been given to not allow those cycles to continue. Right? I'm done, and I told we were talking about this Sunday morning. I'm done letting people that I know love the Lord do things that are outside of his nature in his name. It pesters me to a point to where I would want to slap somebody. Quit doing things that he wouldn't do and telling people he told you to do it. That's not cool. It's not true. It's not right. It's not honest. Makes all of us look bad. But beyond my character looking bad, I'm not about to let you sit there and make him look and sound a fool. It bothers me. He doesn't need your defense. He doesn't need your exoneration. He doesn't need your exhortation. He's who he is, with or without you. You ought to be honored enough that he wants to include you in his workings. It's literally one of the most phenomenal things you can ever sit and think about. The fact that he actually wants you to participate in what he's doing. He does not. It's a hard thing. You'll hardly ever hear anybody say it from the pulpit. He doesn't need us at all.
Right.
But he loves us to the point to where he wants us to be included in what he's doing. It's amazing.
It's like
Donnie,
he created it.
that's it. That's literally the only reason. Donnie was talking Sunday morning. We were doing baptisms, and he was talking about like Austin, his son, who's a year older than me, and then Jacob, his grandson. He's like, both of them did this. I'll be cutting the grass, and they'll want to come help me, and they're awful at it. They ruin everything they try to help me with it, but I love the fact that they want to help, so I let them.
Okay.
That's father nature, right? If I was to put my hands to the work that he's doing, and he was to take his hands off of it, I'd scrap it.
Mess it up.
Faster than a blink. You know what I'm saying? And be proud of it, because I didn't know any better. I'm just trying to help.
That
Yeah.
foreign-
I'm just glad to be here, kind of. Yeah, exactly. But his nature is to, you know what? I'll let you help. Simply because I know you're only wanting to help because you love me.
That's right.
Right. And then because he loves us, he doesn't take the hands off the lawnmower. He teaches us how to use it. And then later on, he can take his hands off of it, and we can kind of do that ourselves while he goes off and does another something to work. So now we know how to cut the grass, so to speak, and he's off here trying to teach us how to change pipes and stuff. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's his nature. Right? He'll let you, sometimes you got to swap the pipe, but you got to leak the pipe. Maybe.
Plumbing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. You threw me for a minute, you know what I'm saying?
No, it's okay.
I'm
man.
back. Hey.
Hey. But in that relation and in that succession, the same way goes throughout the earth. There are things, yes, he's got the whole world in his hands, right? But he gave it to me, so now I'm kind of responsible for it. Like that's how that song should go, right? Yeah, like you know what I'm saying? Like you really, everybody's kind of doing their own thing, thinking that it's him or knowing that it's not him or whatever the case is. But I really think the same. Am I responsible for the people next to me? If they're in the Lord, absolutely. 100%, right? Where's your brother? Or what am I? My brother's keeper? Yes. 100%, right? If you're in covenant with that person through Christ, absolutely. So if you see, now this is why, and I just kind of these thoughts have been turning in my head ever since, like, Zach's been gone overseas and whatever else, and he's just been telling me a lot of cool, awesome, crazy stuff. It kind of goes back to what Justin was saying. They got kicked out of China twice last year on threat of arrest if they returned the third time and still went back. Right? They held them for a day, then released them, told them if they'd come back, they'd really lock them up. But in the meantime, all the people they found at the underground church that they were at locked them up for 6 months. Right? We don't feel anything like that over here.
For what?
For going to church.
Tell them about watching the movie. You know about watching the movie?
Tell them
about watching the movie.
Yeah. So, Watchman Nee goes through the same thing. He's out there, and I'm talking, this is the guy David's probably talked about him a ton. He's where the both of us really kind of got a good understanding of the trichotomy, man is body, soul, spirit, like the 3-in-1 kind of thing. Dude's brilliant. You want to talk about persecuted?
1940s, 30s?
20s. Mm-hmm. Done up, beat up, drug up.
Didn't they cut off his hands or
Cut
something?
his hands
talking-
off so he couldn't write.
So he couldn't write anymore because he's passing out Christian literature. They don't care. You know what I'm saying? But he knew the same way Peter, this is 100% scriptural, lock him up, we're going to let you out, but you can't talk about Jesus anymore. What's the first thing they did? Right back to the town square talking about Jesus. I thought we told you couldn't do this. Look, I got to obey him before I obey you. And that's the word, right? That's a fire word. And, so you're like, man, there's an innate understanding of responsibility in the spirit that you are 100% responsible for people on this earth. It's like Ezekiel 3:17 and 18, and maybe even 19 if I don't completely remember the Lord. He's talking to him and he says, if I give you a word to speak to man and you don't, you're responsible for that man and his eternity. Now, if I give you the word and you speak the word and he doesn't act on it, you're free from that.
Right.
But until you release that word over that person that I told you about, let's say you don't, and they die tomorrow, that's on you. That's a tough word. Very hard to swallow. But it's evangelism and all that, we talk about it and it's fun. Me and Preston, we went on an Easter outreach one time, knocked on a dude's door to hand him a pamphlet. He opened the door with a shotgun.
With a
And
shotgun?
yeah, like,
Trespassing.
what do you want? And I was like, to invite you to our Easter service? Like, it's tomorrow at 7, you know what I'm saying? And he's like, oh. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, those are things that we're 100% responsible for scripturally. And, in a way, not to say that in like a condemning way, because I promise you there's probably 15, 20 people that I've skipped out on talking to that I knew I was supposed to. You know what I'm saying? And whatever. And
Busyness.
yeah, literally fill in the blank. And I'm not necessarily saying that God's holding a record of wrong, but I am saying that there's a portion of him that has given that to us the same way that we're supposed to steward over the earth. That also pertains to what exists in the earth, insofar as sickness, environmental stuff, my money, the church's money, my neighbors, all sorts of stuff like that. Ryan, I'm so sorry. I love you.
I could be wrong because I'm still beginning stages of my walk. But to answer Justin, or what I feel the answer to Justin's question is, are we supposed to stop that? In the Bible it says we're called to make ministers and men, we're supposed to pray for people. So yeah, I feel like it is our duty to stop within reason, because like you said one time, the guy that went out to that island to go minister and then got killed 10 years later.
Smart guy. Yeah.
They went out and saved the entire island. I mean, there's a time and a place, and within reason, yeah, I feel like it is our duty to according to God's will, yeah, I feel like it is our responsibility to go out and help stop the evils in the world. But I mean, we ain't God, so there's only so much we can do.
Yeah.
But back to Lee's question, talking about the diabetes and not taking your medicine and stuff like that. This is something that I battled with for the last month, because being in recovery and quitting taking all drugs. I don't take even Tylenol. It's very rare. When right before my surgery, my face swelled up. Yeah, I did, but they gave me a 10-day supply of Percocet, and that, not recently, but a long time ago, that was one of the things I battled with. I took it for 2 days before my surgery and 2 days after, and I still feel really condemned about it. I feel like I cheated. I feel like in a sense it was a relapse, and so the last 6 days of pills, I went through hell. But I ended up disposing of them the proper way. But I guess my question is that wrong? I feel so. To this day, I was thinking about it last night. Because at the end, when we pray out, I'll explain why I was thinking about it. But it still bothers me that I had to take something that I used to have a problem with, and I guess a part of me started to have an itch, and that's part of where the condemnation comes from. But also just because I feel like I shouldn't have to take it because God got me. But I mean, at the same time, if I could even put into words the misery that I went through, that, and so that's where my battle comes from.
Yeah.
I'm still bothered by it.
And it makes good sense. Those are things that that you've set you've set your conviction bar at a certain height, and you feel like you transgress that to yourself. So it makes total sense that you feel like that. To the same degree, like I said, I understand anybody coming from any background or any non-background, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't want to feel like they have to be dependent on something other than the Lord to take care of them. That makes total sense. It's a logical, proper thought. And at the same time, those pieces, like you're talking about, especially having had a problem with that, pieces of that sometimes will cause you to feel that kind of guilty, because when you were taken, like, okay, so like let's say you're like using Percocet a lot for not what it's intended for, right? So now you're back to the point where, hey, I'm clean, I'm doing good, and I have the opportunity to use this in its proper manner, right? But you got a lot going on, because you got a history with it. Makes total good sense. But there are lots of things that God will try to, and I'm not saying, go back out and try to get another prescription. Don't quote him saying that. There's a lot of things that we use wrongly before we get saved that God will allow you to use rightly afterwards.
Right.
Once you've kind of, basically grown. You know what I'm saying? I don't necessarily think that you're going to quote unquote like grow out of your conviction to not use stuff like that anymore. Because if that's something that He's put in your heart that you don't want to do and you want to set yourself for it, that's totally, you could go the rest of your life. And as long as I was not bothering you or causing you to stumble by using Tylenol, you could, you know what I'm saying? And you not use Tylenol, 100% totally fine. No problem with that whatsoever. But not to the point, I don't think the Lord desires for your heart to be so heavy that you had to use it for I don't want to say it sarcastically, but like 4 days. You know what I'm saying? One, because it's really not that long of a time, but it feels like it's a lot more excessive because it's, to you, something incredibly important to your heart and to your spirit. So I 100% understand that, but I do not think because you've set your heart and your mind against it that He's holding you accountable for, you know what I'm saying, like going back on your word or transgressing a promise you made to Him or anything like that. He's understanding, bro. And like I'm sorry, we kind of took the whole time. We can get back into it, but like even in a relate to, we'll talk about the practicality tomorrow, but that's one of those things, like, yes, He's supernatural, but within the supernatural, He possesses the natural. So if today you got to take Tylenol, take the Tylenol, right? If not, and you're, even if, I'm set against it, I don't want to take, look, bless God, that, He'll honor that. Either way, the decision that you've made to not want to or have to, He honors it. If you have to because you're in like excruciating pain and you've laid hands on yourself and prayed over yourself or had somebody else come lay hands over you and pray on you and nothing's changed and you're like, man, maybe I should go ahead and take that Tylenol, I don't think He's going to hate you for it. Same way, like almost 2 years ago now, I got diagnosed with semi-chronic hypertension migraines. I have 3 or 4 a week. They're awful. And I've got a basically continuous refill of propanolol for my migraines because it's a repressant. I take it twice a week because I'm not going to take it 3 times a day like they told me to. I think that's kind of outrageous. And
Does it work?
kind of.
Might work better if you take it like you're supposed to.
Well, it makes good sense. But to the same degree, what I look like chewing tablets. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm that's just not something that I want to get back into or, mess with or anything like that. So, point being,